the March 16th Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission regular meeting. Do you want to do roll call, Jamie?
Yes. Chair Steenblock.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Ramseth.
Here.
Commissioner Gary.
Here.
Commissioner Steenblock.
Here.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Here.
And Commissioner Geyer.
Here.
All right, so then we are looking for an approval for the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Or second?
I think we had Tim Gary as the motion and Karen as the second. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing no discussion, do we want to roll call that one, Jamie, as well?
Sure. Chair Steenblock.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth.
Aye.
Commissioner Gary.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock.
Yes.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
All right, so I do see some additional names here, Jamie. I'm not sure if they're part of the open forum or our discussion later on the athletic field. Do we have anybody that wants to speak as part of the open forum?
We have a couple people for future agenda items. If there's anybody that does want to speak during open forum, now would be your opportunity. If you want to just signal with your hand, or Melissa, did you want to speak during open forum, or are you good for just conversation later?
I think they're all muted, the ones I see.
I'm okay until we start talking about Fenway. Yep.
Okay. So no one for the open forum tonight.
All right, I guess we will move on then to 5A, which is the approval of the meeting minutes for January 19th of 2021.
I move to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion from Betty and a second from Tim Gary. Do we have any discussion on those meeting minutes? Hearing no discussion, should we roll call, Jamie?
I'll do roll call again. Chair Steenblock.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth.
Aye.
Commissioner Gary.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock.
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
All right, well, moving right along then, we have 5B, which is the Castlewood Golf Course Agreement Renewal. Jamie?
All right, Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. I did send over a separate cover earlier today. The updated contract with the Castlewood Golf Course Management Agreement. And just as a reminder, we did look at this with City Council at a joint workshop on February 16th. And during that, we had a good discussion of the overall contract, the positive experience from 2020, and the intent from Council and Parks Commission to move forward with the new contract. There were just a few contractual things that we discussed. So all of those items were addressed in this draft version of the new contract with Foursome Golf Management. This contract term would be effective April 1st of 2021 and expire on December 31st of 2025. We did have in there that the city may, in its sole discretion, elect to offer a one-time extension of this agreement for up to a maximum of 2 additional years. So just wanted to call out some of the as indicated, the changes that were made. I know Terry had a list of kind of administrative grammar updates. Those were made, Terry, throughout the contract. Some of the bigger things that there was some confusion or question about the food and beverage sold. So we did add language in here that basically says that the manager shall provide a list of any proposed changes and fees, and then, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. The manager shall provide food and beverage options for sale at Castlewood Golf Course. So the new language, the manager must provide to the city a list, and any alterations to the menu must be submitted to the city for approval. So I think that should be comfortable for everybody, that if we'll have a list that we know what they're selling, and if there's any changes, that'll be submitted to the city for approval. Other than that, we talked about Commissioner Moorhead had requested that the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission review proposed changes and recommend approval to City Council, so that language is updated. There was a couple, Mayor Bain had commented on if there's a future clubhouse that this agreement will be renegotiated in good faith, so that language was added. And we just had some changes with the insurance amount, so I'm just working with the manager to make sure that still is, in alignment with their requirements. So in a nutshell, we've covered all of the contractual changes and seeking a recommended approval to City Council. If approved tonight, it would go to their March 22nd meeting for final adoption.
Say, Jamie, I have a question on, let's see, I guess it'd be item number 3. I was talking about removed act of God. Now, is that to have less liability on the part of the city, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes, and City Council?
The reason that came back as an alteration is that it was very vague as to what is defined as acts of God, and so there was needed to either be clarification from our city attorney or the city attorney to remove that. So our legal team was comfortable removing that language because the other financial requirements in the insurance portion are of the amounts that are required by the state and would cover that as well. So their legal made the decision to remove that, and our manager flagged it as just, it's pretty vague. So they either wanted it clarified or removed from the contract.
So then do they replace it then by itemizing all acts of God, hail, storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, et cetera, or what? How is that rectified?
If there would be, my understanding is that legal removed it knowing that the other insurance requirements that are listed would cover any of those items. So I'm just pulling it up here. The manager's insurance would cover for those items based, I think, on their general liability insurance. So it's in the amount of, let's see. Yeah, so the legal took that out of there, and the insurance requirements listed are what legal is seeking for our manager.
Okay, all right.
Jamie, this is Doug. On the
Yeah.
term of the agreement, we had talked about, I believe at the last session, 2 or 5-year extensions. And am I mistaken, or is this a change, this 2-year extension?
We had the 2-year extension at the joint workshop.
Okay.
We had the 5-year recommended with the 1 extension up to 2 additional years. So I didn't change anything from the joint workshop.
Okay.
Jamie, I have just a quick question. First of all, thank you, Tim, for bringing that up. That kind of made me question it too. And is it going to be able to be settled with just not having them identified? But you seem to think, or the legal did, that the insurance would be able to cover that. Sometimes it's nice to have things written out really clear, but if they think that's fine. The only other thing I had, I think it's great. We're getting a good start on the season. All of the references to things coming back to the city, does that mean the Park, Lakes, and Trails, or does that mean the city would make those decisions and then we would just be made aware of them?
It would really, the process should be changes would come to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. You are advisory to City Council. So if they're, for example, if they make any alterations, that would come to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, and you would recommend to City Council approval or disapproval of those.
So it'd go to the city and then come to us before they made any decisions. It's just nice to not be surprised again and say, this was changed and we didn't know it. So as long as we still get the information and then it goes back to the city, I'm fine with that.
Correct. That's how the process should be working, is Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, and then recommendations to City Council.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
The only thing that I'm just being that the insurance questions are still pending with the manager. I think we still can move forward with, I think it's really up to the city council and legal team to make sure that the insurance requirements are compliant and what the city is comfortable with. I don't know if the manager will come back with any issues on what the legal team changed those contract amounts, the insurance amounts to be. But I think, you know, that in the next day or two, hopefully I'll have some answers on that. But I think that's really just the legal and city council to make that final, you know, whatever the recommendation is from the legal to have for insurance requirements, that the manager complies with that.
Any other discussion or questions? This is an action item, so this is one we'll need a motion on if we're going to take action on it.
I'll make a motion to approve the Castlewood golf course changes. Is there anything else I should put in there, Jamie?
I think that's sufficient, just recommending approval to council.
Okay, second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I guess I just want to make sure it's clear in this that if our manager says that the insurance requirements that our legal team made, if there's any issues with that we work that out, and if, you know, council makes that final approval. I think Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission, you're recommending approval of a contract with Foursome Golf Management with the terms and conditions applied. Unfortunately, I just got this back from legal late last night and it was due last week, so I didn't have time to get that over to the manager sooner. So I still like to get this to move forward, but I just want to make sure that that's clear, that that's what Parks, Trails and Lakes recommendation is, that if there's any challenges or, you know, changes with that the insurance requirement, that council would make that final determination.
That sounds good.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, do you want to roll call it, Jamie?
Yes, I will roll call. So Chair Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead,
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
All right, so motion carries.
All right.
All right, so next on the agenda is the athletic field fee recommendation.
So Chair and members of the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission, just going to also follow up from our joint workshop with the City Council on February 16th. So as you know, we're transitioning facility models, which will require the city to set a fee schedule for our athletic fields. And our fee schedule is part of a city code and ordinance adoption. So we need to set fees and have that as part of our city code and fee schedule. So we will run through a presentation today. I think Chair Steenblock's gonna start that off and go through most of that. I think that'll provide some good answers to some of the questions there might be on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And we'll get to that fee conversation and proposal in the presentation today. So this is action. We would like to, if ready, to make a recommendation to council on the fee structure for our athletic fields. And again, this is particularly at Fenway. We've talked about the other fields like Schilling and Belts and Cool and Camp. That's included tonight, but there's been some changes in if it's a hourly rate or a per player fee rate. So we'll go through that in the presentation tonight. And if you have any questions, we'll have time at the end for any questions for that. So with that being said.
So you all should see Fenway Fields Athletic Field Complex white slide on your screen.
I think we can see your speaking notes too, Terry.
Oh, you can. So then I didn't share the right one.
The multiple screens is difficult. Hang on, Terry, 1 second. I got 2 people joining as well. So we'll get those guys in. Okay.
All right. So do you see the white screen now?
Yep.
All right. So let me know, Jamie, when you're ready, when you've got the two individuals in.
They should be included as well. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, all right. So as Jamie mentioned, we've been looking at a athletic field complex policy. And the proposal we're going to discuss tonight is really a proposal for all of the athletic fields. So all of the athletic fields being Belts, Cooling Camp, Schilling, and Fenway. However, I think there's been a lot of questions around Fenway fields and the involvement of FLA. I know I've gotten some questions on that. I think Jamie's gotten some questions as well. And that really stemmed us to thinking about the fact that we've got some new parks, trails, and lakes commissioners that are new to this team since over the last, 4-ish years or so. We've also got some new council members that are with us now. And so as a result of that, we thought that it might be a good time to really spend some more time in reviewing the historical journey we've been on and how we're arriving at the proposal that you're going to hear about tonight. Really, our goal today is to talk about where we've been, where we are, and then where we're proposing to head. And again, this proposal would be for all of the athletic fields. So I stress that again because we're going to be spending some time talking about Fenway and FLA as a result of those questions. But the ultimate outcome here of the proposal is to have something that applies to all the fields together. So with that, we're going to start by taking a quick snapshot look at the beginning of Fenway Fields and the start of the city and the FLA partnership. So again, just to make sure everyone's on the same page as to how we designed the ultimate proposal that you're looking at today, we thought it was important to spend some time on this. So just so everybody knows, Fenway Fields was approved and built in 2007, and at that time, the city invested $1.8 million into the building of the fields. That construction was completed in 2008, and as a result of the construction being completed, one of the things that the city did was they worked to issue an RFP where they were looking for a contract opportunity to have a management partnership with the fields. And as part of that RFP process, the contract was awarded to FLA. So that award resulted in the first Fenway Athletic Park Management Agreement, which was signed in 2010. So again, that first agreement that we had between the city and FLA was signed in 2010. And then it was again renewed in 2012. And then it was renewed again in 2017. Through 2017, the agreements were 3-year agreements. And so every 3 years it would come up for renewal. And the model of the agreement was one that was built on the foundation that FLA would have exclusive use of the fields for their programs. And they would also be the point of contact to schedule the fields for the other groups. They would set all fee structures for Fenway Fields, and then they would be responsible for the maintenance, which included everything from field prep to the irrigation. So essentially, the city took a very hands-off approach or operations as it related to the maintenance, only contributing to the maintenance if there were requests that were brought forward from FLA as needed. I think the other thing that's really important to note is that over the years, FLA has made some investments in those fields. So for example, they worked with the school district in a partnership with the Forest Lake High School to build the concession stand that's out there. I know that they had allocated pretty sizable amount of money on that. I think it was about $25,000 for that project. They've also added scoreboards out at Fenway Fields as well. So they've had not only, I would say, a physical investment in Fenway Fields, they've also had a financial investment out at Fenway Fields as well. So with that agreement, FLA subcontracted out the maintenance and the management services. So the information that you see on this slide was taken from the 2017 and 18 profit and loss statements, which were provided to the city. And the reason why that was provided is that was one of the requirements of that agreement that was signed, is that FLA would provide this information to the city. So 2017 and 18 came from the profit and loss statement. 2017 through September of that year, 2018 was the full year, and then 2019 was provided as an Excel spreadsheet with this information on it. So what you see here is this is really a comparison of the contracted maintenance costs for FLA from 2017, 18, and 19. So as I noted, you'll notice in 2017, it only reflects that 57,562. And again, that's because we were looking at a profit and loss statement through September of 2017. So essentially what you see is the cost increasing slightly from 2018 and 2019, which we'll talk about in a little bit as part of the presentation. But really, I think the important thing to note here is that the key responsibilities as part of that agreement averaged around $76,000 to $77,000 a year. So what you see on this slide in front of you is a list of the contracted services that FLA was required to provide as part of that agreement from 2017 through 2019. So if you look at this, there's a pretty extensive list here. And, you know, it included things like the regular mowing of the complex, the fertilization, the weed control, even down to collecting trash, cleaning bathrooms, being the liaison with us, winterizing the concession stand, the restrooms, the irrigation systems. So there was quite a list of contracted services that FLA was handling back then. So in addition to the contracted services that FLA was paying for as part of that agreement, they also had some additional expenses that were reported to manage and maintain the athletic complex. And again, these figures come from the profit and loss statement. And as it rightfully respects here, there's a lot of work and expenses that goes into managing the facility that we have here. So I'm gonna, hopefully folks had a chance to take a look at that. I'm gonna keep moving on, and we'll allow some time for questions at the end. So if you wouldn't mind noting questions that you have, we can always go back, but I know we've got quite a bit of information to cover, but we want to make sure we answer your questions as well. So, you know, we've talked about expenses and the responsibilities, but just as FLA was responsible for those expenses, the agreement also had terms that allowed FLA to seek some reimbursement for some of those expenses. So FLA was allowed to charge reasonable fees for the use of the complex fields and the facilities. They were able to sell food and beverages or other concessions, and they were also able to rent or charge a fee for the use of the concession stand. So if there was another party or event that wanted to utilize the complex and they wanted that concession stand, they were allowed to rent or charge a fee if that person or party was interested in using the concession stand. They also were allowed to pursue any paid advertising opportunities for Fenway Fields as well. So if we take a look at this screen, in summary, this just gives us a picture of what the revenue and the expenses looked like for Fenway Fields over the years here. It is important to note that the field rental fees from the FLA sports have been a larger bucket of revenue to offset their expenses. So as you see here, you've got the field rental for the sports. around $40,000 to $43,000 here. So, you know, one thing to note there is that that total fee that you see of the 42, if we use 2017, for example, that 42.6 is really broken down with receiving $11,000 from baseball, $8,300 from the fast pitch, and $15,500 from football, and $7,800 from lacrosse. So that's how you get to that total. Those individual teams pay the field rental fee to the FLA organization as a whole. So yeah, this is again, total profit and loss, expenses, and revenue. So moving along, now that we kind of have an idea of what the management agreement model entailed, we had to take a look at some of the challenges that arose with this model. So what you're looking at here is a timeline that shows you a glimpse of the involvement from the city in 2017. So we'll talk here on this slide about 2017, and then we'll talk about some of the other years after this. So in April of 2017, the Fenway Management Agreement was renewed for a 3-year contract that was effective through December 31st of 2019. And so we were just getting into a new contract term when we were notified in June of 2017 of some maintenance and safety issues and concerns at the Fenway fields. And some of the concerns that we began to receive, we started hearing from some teams that were reporting some safety issues with the field conditions. We had some other organizations that expressed confusion as to how to reserve and utilize those fields. And then we also had residents that, Jamie, can you mute that line for me, please?
Yeah.
We also had some residents that had complaints about not being able to utilize the fields. So knowing that we had all that to deal with, we wanted to come up with a strategy as to what we should do to address these things. So we looked at prioritizing the concerns that were brought forward, and we chose to start by investigating the field conditions. And when I say we chose, that was the parks, it was our commission at the time that chose to start with investigating the field condition issues and determining whether or not they were warranted issues, and if so, what needed to be done to address those possible safety issues. So in July of 2017, this commission did a site visit of Fenway Fields, where we were able to verify some of the concerns shared with the conditions of the fields. And then the city also engaged with FLA president at that time, Al Hoagie, by providing written feedback and requests through face-to-face meeting opportunities to discuss the current conditions out at the field and the feedback that we had. So the other thing that happened then in 2017 was that a third-party sports turf manager was hired for their professional analysis of the turf quality at Fenway Fields. So in August, they provided a report of their analysis of the turf quality at Fenway. And then this commission held a special meeting, which included the city administrator and FLA to discuss the issues and review a Fenway athletic field maintenance plan that was submitted by FLA. So also occurring during this time frame of 2017, the city hired Mulgren Aeration to do some immediate restoration to that Field 5 infield and some other turf issues that were out there. So in September, the commission discussed options for next steps, and we also approved a motion to request records the city was entitled to per the agreement. And the reason why that motion was made was to help prepare for an upcoming joint workshop that was on the schedule, which as part of that joint workshop, we were going to be looking at, and so what's next? What do we do? And we wanted that record information to help give us a better understanding of what maintenance was happening at the fields and to ensure all the agreement requirements were being met. In October, we held a workshop with the city administrator and the public works superintendent, Dave Adams, to learn more about the extent of the damage and the repairs with the irrigation system and the complex. And again, when I'm using the term we, I'm talking about we as this commission holding that meeting. During that meeting, the commission also discussed the options and brainstormed as to where do we go from here. And at that point, the city administrator had advised us that the option of using Blue Diamond for one more year was not an option. And again, Blue Diamond was one of the organizations that FLA contracted with to do some of this maintenance work. The outcome of this meeting that we had was asking the city to gather some bids to understand the cost of some of the options that we had brainstormed so that we would have a better idea of things to be able to present to council by our December meeting. So in November, this commission spent time talking about maintenance options at Fenway Fields in preparation for that joint workshop. And again, the joint workshop was a joint workshop that was being held between City Council, our commission, and the FLA Executive Board. So then December rolled along, and in December, when we held that joint workshop, what we discussed there was going with a contractor to assist with some of the maintenance. And we tried to establish some of the requirements that would fall under this contract as part of the assistance with the maintenance. It was somewhat difficult to establish some of that work just because we didn't have any historical data to use as a baseline. So for example, we had to estimate the number of mows that we thought a contractor would be responsible for completing because we didn't have any records available for us as to the number of mows that actually occurred. So we noted that during that meeting that the numbers we were using were estimates and they may change because we weren't sure what would happen as far as the actual work that needed to be done and what those costs would be. Again, in particular, it was mowing that was of special interest during that particular workshop. So after that meeting, we agreed that the city would solicit bids for maintenance at Fenway Fields, and then the city and FLA would come to agreement on a mutually agreed upon new maintenance provider for Fenway Fields. So that solicitation did happen, bids were submitted, and FLA entered into an agreement with Walker Enterprises for the 2018 season. All right, so what you're looking at here, we just, again, wanted to make sure you were all aware. I mentioned that there was a third party that came in and did an assessment. This screen here just shows you some of the issues that were identified by that third party company as part of the analysis that was done. Again, this was something that our commission took a look at and was able to evaluate and utilize to try to come up with a solution working together with the city and with FLA on that piece. And then this is just a picture of after, as I mentioned, that Mogren Aeration was hired for some immediate restoration of Field 5 to address some of those safety issues. And the safety issues were addressed, and this is just kind of a reflection of what that is. So one of the things that did happen as part of this, again, I mentioned that we met with Dave Adams and got a better idea of what the issues were out there and what that looked like and what the cost was going to be. So really what you're looking at here is just a recap that the city did do a full analysis of the irrigation system that's out there. And over 50% of the irrigation system was damaged and not functioning properly. So the city staff did repair all the irrigation in September, which was a cost of about $20,000. So, and just noting here that FLA was not the ones responsible for the irrigation. The city actually held a separate contract with Blue Diamond for the irrigation maintenance and repair and winterization of that. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that we as a commission kind of talked about some ideas or some options. Where do we go from here? As far as maintenance goes, kind of moving forward. And we had brainstormed a few different options. One of those options was that we continue the agreement with FLA, and FLA allows and allow FLA to continue contracting with Blue Diamond. Another option was that we would continue the agreement with FLA, but utilize that new maintenance provider. And then the third was that the city would take over the complete maintenance of that. And that was something that came forward at one of the meetings. So I mentioned this before, that we put out the bid, and Walker Enterprises was selected to maintain the fields. So if I were to summarize 2017 for you, there was a lot of activity that went on. But again, the city and FLA entered into a new 3-year management agreement. We were notified of some issues, and we chose to prioritize, we being this commission, chose to prioritize those maintenance issues as the first set of things to tackle so that we could address some safety concerns. Our commission identified issues. Our commission discussed the identified issues monthly. And then we also felt it was important to bring in a third-party turf expert to also do this analysis along with us. So we reviewed that assessment as well. We hired that company to do some immediate restoration. We fixed the damage done to the irrigation system. We consulted with City Council via several joint meetings. We also had some meetings with FLA as well to reach out about a solution for 2018. And I apologize, I forgot an A at the end of that FLA there. So I'll point that out and apologize. And then we had a new maintenance provider that was hired. So that pretty much summarizes 2017. So what you're looking at on this particular slide is kind of the contract and what it costs as it relates to this. So what we've done on this slide is give you a comparison of what was the required maintenance in the agreement is listed on the left-hand side. And then across the top, what you see is who was responsible for that. So for example, in 2017, FLA and Blue Diamond were responsible. In 2018, it was FLA, Blue Diamond, and Walker Enterprises. And then in 2019, it was FLA, and we know Walker Enterprises. We don't know if there was another provider that FLA contracted with in 2019 or not. So then what you see is that the agreement required fertilization treatments. So you can see in 2017, there was 1, 3, and 3 that were provided there. The weed control, we don't have records to show us the weed control or the weekly mowing. So the only thing we can reflect here is that it was done weekly in 2018 and 19, which is where we did have records to demonstrate that. The contracted amount that you're looking at, so for 2017, the contracted amount of $57,562.51 included both the management and the maintenance. So we don't know the breakdown of the contract from 2017 as to what of that was management of the fields and what of that entailed the maintenance of the fields. So whereas we can point that out a little bit in the other years. The other thing to note here is in 2019, the total amount that was contracted for field services between FLA and Walker Enterprises was 54,150. But the dollar amount paid, which was reported by FLA, was the 48,416. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And we're not sure, what that difference is, but as you can see, the contracted amounts were relatively consistent. It's just a matter of who was doing that work. I should also note that FLA did end up paying a little bit more for those mowings in 2008 because, as we discussed, we didn't know how many mows were done. So we projected that a little under what was actually paid. So they ended up paying a little bit more than what was contracted for. All right, so for calendar year 2018 and 19, really what happened there is that we monitored the field conditions. So Parks, Lakes, and Trails monitored that. Parks, Trails, and Lakes monitored that. The city Public Works monitored that and made sure that the maintenance was executed as agreed upon. We did start to have some discussions about the agreement that would be expiring at the end of 2019. And it was during this time that we also learned of some new scheduling challenges and some other local teams leaving town for home games. And that really prompted us to note that we needed a long-term plan that not only addressed those maintenance issues, but address those other issues that we talked about, which was that accessibility to the fields when they weren't in use and the confusion around how to reserve the fields. So other than that, it's kind of, we got into a groove here with maintenance and things were relatively the same. So again, thinking about the fact that the agreement was coming to an end here, we needed to really take a look at, what are we going to do going forward? What does this look like? But we also had some other changes that happened in 2020 that we wanted to make sure that we pointed out here. So in April, for example, the maintenance contracting transitioned to the city, and the city entered into a contract with Black Rock Properties for the Fenway field maintenance. And we'll get into what maintenance means here in just a few slides, but it did transition from FLA over to the city, and the city contracted with Black Rock. In June of 2020, the city entered into a one-year contract with FLA. And, thinking back onto 2020, right, that was the year of COVID. And so the new contract waived all fees to FLA due to COVID because nobody knew, were they going to be able to collect fees from their teams? Were they going to be able to hold games? And it just was the right thing to do to waive the fees for FLA. So they were waived in June. In September, the city proposed a new fee structure looking at a flat $60,000 fee structure. And this is one that was proposed and discussed and was not supported at that time by FLA. So that gave us the opportunity to take a step back and look at some other alternatives for proposals. In October, as you all may recall, Patrick came as city manager, came to our meeting, and he also issued a memo that we met and talked about as it related to facilities management model shift. So again, looking at the facilities as a whole and that management model shift where not only Fenway Fields, but the golf course and the senior center would all fall under a city's facilities management model. So we discussed that. Patrick and I believe some other city staff as well met with the FLA president to advise them of the simplified field rental process that would be going forward, and that we wouldn't be having an agreement moving forward. It would be a simplified field rental process instead. So again, just recapping 2020, that the city entered into a 1-year maintenance contract with BlackRock Properties for the mowing, the fertilization, and the weed control. The city suggested a new facilities use agreement with FLA during that time as well. So at that point, we looked at potentially a structure of them paying $2,000 per week that the fields were in use by FLA. So if the fields aren't in use, they don't pay. If they're in use, it would be a fee of $2,000. That was something that I don't think was preferred either. So then we started looking at some other options that we'll get to here in just a little bit. So what you see in front of you is just what the city paid to BlackRock Property to do that maintenance, which was the $39,352. So we did think that by waiving that rental fee, that there would have been a cost savings to FLA for 2020, and we estimated that at about between $25,000 and $30,000, and that was just based on when the fields were actually used, which I believe was about a 15-week period. Okay, so I think I can skip this next one because we already talked about that. All right, so then as part of this journey, we looked at what are other cities doing? And this was something that the city council asked us to take a look at as well. This is something that some of you asked us to take a look at as well. And we looked at numerous cities. What you see on the screen in front of you is just a snapshot of a few that we looked at. What this endeavor really told us is that every city is different, and every city's fee structure is different. And, to just pick up a fee structure and cut and paste it into the city of Forest Lake, it didn't really make sense. But again, there was an extensive comparison done over multiple different cities. And this is just showing you a snapshot of a few different comparisons that were done. And Jamie, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add on that one.
Yeah, I think that just, the thing with the different cities is there's so many these are different models that you can do, which is a season permit per player. Some communities, I know FLA had also done some research and provided information to the city outlining some that didn't charge any rental fees at all and just for the field prep. And similar to Rosemont, just not charging any fees at all. Other communities do partnerships, but there's just a lot of different models, and there's a lot that goes into the ins and outs of each city's unique situation with what they have for staffing and partnerships and resources. So that really drives the fees that they charge. So this is, again, just some different models for setting a fee structure that we've looked at, in addition to many more.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, so in January of 2021, city staff met with FLA's president to review a proposed hourly rate instead of the flat fee rate that was proposed. And so the FLA president had expressed some concerns with that proposal. And as a result, to try to figure out where we needed to be, we asked him to submit information by a set deadline to help our commission and the city understand the concern a little bit more and determine what an appropriate amount might be. And so we asked for some information on expenses because, again, there were two primary goals here that we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to identify a fee structure that is equitable for FLA, and we're also looking at identifying a break-even point. And while the break-even point may not be considered in the overall picture, it's just something that we wanted to be able to take a look at, and it's something that the city council asked to be able to take a look at. But we recognize that with most of our parks, breaking even doesn't happen with most of our parks. But it was an important factor as we tried to figure out what to do here long term to make sure we had a fee structure that was equitable and and we could understand what was happening historically as well. So, so we have been working on that since about mid-January, and trying to take some steps here to figure out where we go next. So, you know, the original set of information we asked for was not provided. However, we were able to have a meeting where we discussed in detail what we needed, which I think helped provide some clarity. And the set of information was provided then after that meeting. So essentially what you're seeing here, a couple of the things that we asked for was to be able to see a breakdown of per team, what are the expenses for the teams under that FLA umbrella? You know, how many people are registering for these particular teams, just to try to understand the field rental and what things looked like. So as you can see here, you see both football and lacrosse, which again tells you the number of registrants, it tells you the total revenue, and it tells you some of those expenses. You'll note, for example, lacrosse has field rental and it says Fenway in schools. So that means that, you know, lacrosse is paying field rental to the FLA organization, but they also had some fees that they had to pay to the schools as well, if that makes sense. Jamie, anything you want to add on this one?
No, I think you covered, if you want to go to the next one, because it includes the softball and football, the same kind of information. But I think the key is, you know, when you're evaluating which fee structure and model, for an equitable approach, you look at number of registrants to consider a per player model, you know, having some information on field utilization, which I think we also cover. But that was helpful to gauge kind of the number of registrants and get an idea of what they're paying for field rental and what that includes. So kind of just helped determine which model we, you know, could go forward with in our presentation.
Yeah, I think it did help us understand the field rental piece, which we didn't have a complete picture of. So understanding that a little bit better was really, I think, beneficial. All right, so then on, we had some follow-up information that we received from FLA on March 8th. So that's what you see here. So what we're looking at here is we were trying to attempt to get some information as it pertains to utilization of the fields. The one thing that's missing here or makes it a little bit harder to utilize these numbers is that they really are, they're varied across the sports, obviously, but we don't have the context behind how they're tracked. Are they tracked differently based on a particular sport? So you see a little bit of that in here. And we really weren't clear as to what schedule hours entailed for that. So while it was interesting information, it doesn't give us the full picture. We also can't see, you know, like how does the utilization break down based on age, or, you know, the types of, is it recreational usage versus traveling usage? So insightful information, but made it difficult to take a look at it from a utilization standpoint. So based on information that we had, this is what each team paid to FLA for field rental in 2019. So, and again, we shared with you in the previous slide what's included in that maintenance. Again, chalking, raking, bathrooms, you know, so if we need to, we can go back. But what you see here is what they paid, which included maintenance costs. Well, I'll just give you a second to take a look at it, and I won't read it to you, but we felt that this was important information. It gives us all more background on the history of the work here, and again, what has been paid, because again, keeping in mind, one of our goals was to make sure we had something equitable here. So Anything else on this one, Jamie?
Yeah, I think just this kind of goes back to, several years of under the management agreement that these teams and these sports were paying these amounts are similar to FLA, and again, to help with some of those maintenance costs. So this is one of their sources of revenue to offset some of those costs that they had for running the athletic complex. I think one thing to note is, we don't know how these fees were set by FLA from an equitability standpoint of why 15.5 for football and why 10 for baseball and so forth. So I don't know how those were set or calculated. But these were the numbers that FLA teams have been paying to FLA for the past several of years. And again, we do know that this amount that they're paying isn't just to use the fields. It's again, there's a portion of that goes to FLA for field prep or other expenses incurred in the maintenance or operations of Fenway fields. So just a little point of clarification on that. The only other thing, lacrosse had the $10,439, and some of that did go to the schools. There just as one unknown we had was how much of the $12,170 went to Columbus, but I know they were paying Columbus $20 for a 4-hour block. So just a little unknown there on how much of that was exactly derived for Fenway Fields versus Columbus.
All right, so now that we've kind of talked about the history, where we've been, kind of what was looked at, I want to spend some time talking about the proposed plan for FLA here. And again, the overall plan that we're looking for too, that we need to discuss is keeping in mind that this is for the athletic fields. But again, what we're talking about here is the proposed plan for FLA. So what we're proposing is that we institute a season permit for the organizations like FLA. We're also proposing that they continue to get priority scheduling of the fields, just as they do today. That would not change. They would get that priority scheduling. We're proposing that we institute a tournament rental fee. And then for those that are not part of an organization like FLA or others, they would have an hourly rate for residents and non-residents. And so this isn't the situation where, this is where if you want to rent the field and you want to do your own little family reunion ball game or something like that on the fields, and you want to make sure they're guaranteed and reserved for you, there would be this hourly rate for a resident versus non-resident. And this is similar to what we did with the gazebo at Lakeside Park. So again, if individuals just the field is empty, they want to walk over and walk onto those fields, have a little pickup game with the family or the kids in the neighborhood, there would not be a charge to do that. We are not proposing any fee charge for that. And then we would institute a process for all the teams working with the city to reserve and pay for the fields. So they would work directly through the city to do that. So what does that look like? If you're a resident, proposing $30 per hour. If you're non-resident, $45 per hour. The other city fields, again, outside of Fenway, so Belts, for example, $15 per hour, or non-resident would be $25 per hour. Looking at the tournament fees here, actually, I'll quit reading to you. I'll give you a second to read the slide. And Jamie, I'll ask you, while they're reading, is there anything you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just mention that the first, the Fenway Fields, resident, non-resident, and other city fields, resident, non-resident. This should look familiar. We talked about this at the joint workshop, and I think there was good, everyone seemed pretty in alignment with those fees. Similarly, the tournament schedule, the youth nonprofit tournaments, those were some recommendations from FLA on those nonprofit tournament rates. And then we again looked at these other rates at the joint workshop. So they seem reasonable and in alignment with what we discussed. So the biggest change then is the season permits. And again, we really just want this to be as simplistic as we can moving forward, being mindful of FLA 2021 budgets already being set, and similarly being fiscally responsible for the city with our 2021 budgets. Some of this, we will have incur some costs, which we'll talk about next, but just really looking at how do we allow them to continue to schedule the fields, priority use, how they've been scheduling in the past, but to be able to still work within their budget. So we really did an analysis on all the different options. I think a per player model is difficult at this time for an equitability standpoint because we don't have enough detail of how much you're charging a T-ball player who does one practice in one game compared to 10U where they have 2 practices, 2 games and tournaments. So there's definitely a utilization difference there. So we really think a season permit's at that good happy medium that we're looking for. Something that each sport within Flosh, is comfortable with the budgeted amounts they've paid in the past. And then this also gives them some room in their budget for the FLA expenses they'll still have, whether it's field prep or other items out at Fenway. So these numbers were calculated off of the previous amounts you saw that were being paid to FLA, and this is 75% of that. So it gives some budget to, again, cover field prep and other costs with FLA organization.
Now the 2 asterisks next to football, do we want to talk about that now or do we want to wait till we're done?
Well, I can just make a quick note, just put an asterisk there. I'm not sure, again, to the previous slide of how the original fee structure was set from FLA. And I know it looked like over the past several years, football paid the $15,500 to FLA. Just from the data we've collected and what information we've been able to gather, it just seemed a little bit, if it's an outlier, if it's higher, if there's any justification to reduce that, I think that is a good discussion, or maybe it's just if there's any more information, but we just did the 75% of all the fees that were previously paid to FLA. But that is why I'm noted that it just seems higher than other groups. And so I just wanted to make a note that, open to discuss if needed, if we need to look at that one. I know that football has a lot more reported registrations, but I know, I don't know much about their schedule other than their early July through October. So I think I don't know how long their season would be or how many games that is, but they do have more registrants. So I don't know if it was calculated that way or not. So.
All right, so this would be that fee, but we also need to take a look at what would the city's Fenway field expenses be. So that's what you're looking at on this screen in front of you. These are the estimated city expenses as it relates to the fields out there right now. One thing that is important to note is that we think that there may be an opportunity here for the city to seek out some additional revenue sources to support those expenses. So for example, maybe there's some organizations in the community that would be interested in some type of sponsorship program out at the fields with recognition there. Or again, if there are tournament opportunities that are not FLA tournaments, that could be an additional revenue source to help supplement, and then schedule with other uses as well.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick note on here, the field scheduling, and that's really scheduling and management on site. So that's budgeted dollars in the event that there's non-FLA activities where we would need to provide staff or resources for anything out at Fenway Athletic Complex. Under this new model, Fenway or FLA teams, obviously schedule out priority. And if there's an opportunity for a weekend where there's nothing booked on the calendar, if we can seek out a tournament, that budget is there for some of that scheduling and management, and just coordinating with teams to make sure that everything runs smoothly. We will have some cost for that, but really that's just a budgeted amount. And I'm not saying that we're going to necessarily need it all. It's just in there as a budget item in the event that we have some of those costs incurred out at Fenway, like the list we had provided earlier. And I think we'll share that again here shortly. So just wanted to clarify, it's not just field scheduling, it's some of that management. If there's a non-FLA, like if a family rents the complex out and the city needs to have someone for bathrooms or whatnot. So just wanted to call that out. And lastly, I think, portable restrooms, so porta potties and dumpsters, one benefit of this is we're able to leverage some of our resources. We have a new contract with Republic Services where those are in our contract with them. So we shouldn't have any costs where that used to be a cost in the past for FLA. So that's all I have to add on that slide.
So again, what we're trying to do is allow the teams some wiggle room for the maintenance costs that they may have in addition to the field rental fee. So the other thing we did was try to take a look at how could we help them in that area as well. So we looked at the maintenance agreements that were originally there, and then looking with the goal of looking to reduce the burden and the responsibility and FLA through those maintenance agreements. So hopefully maybe by reducing the burden of responsibility, it would potentially lower the annual expenses of those contracted services that the teams pay to FLA. So this just is an illustration of what would go away. I would make the disclaimer that, the disposal of trash and the cleaning of the bathrooms, there might be an opportunity there to leverage some of the staff resources, such as the park rangers when they're out and about, but we don't want to commit to that right now and have there be an issue there. So we've left them on this list with the goal of hopefully being able to reduce FLA's responsibility of having to collect trash, empty the trash bins, and maintaining the bathrooms. So it essentially just would leave the dragging and the chalking, the assisting in the setup of the painting, and the touch-up work there. So again, hoping.
And just one more comment, and some of these were left on here as well, as I know that it's been communicated to the city that there are volunteer requirements for FLA teams and families. So, there's the facilities use guidelines, and I don't know of this list, what is contracted out, or is there a portion of this that is eligible for volunteer hours, such as dragging or chalking of ball fields before or after games, and touching up of the fields, if football or lacrosse is painting the fields for volunteer hours. So we want to make sure that, we're keeping these as an opportunity for FLA to do that if there's the need for the volunteer piece. So again, another reason why some of these are still left up there.
All right, so then kind of looking at this continued partnership. So it is important to note that we are still very interested and deeply committed to a partnership between the city and FLA. And so we would convert to this athletic facility committee instead of the Fenway Athletic Advisory Committee. And by making that conversion, we can take a look at the fields that all of them are using and look at some strategies for short and long-term improvements and expansion there. I think this also gives us the opportunity to look for other capital improvement funding opportunities and fundraising efforts that we can look at. And again, maybe potentially some of that is some sponsorship opportunities, because we've talked for a long time here that, we need to make some capital improvements into these various athletic fields. And we're committed to still being able to do that, and committed to still looking for resources where we may be able to do that. And then just kind of talking a little bit about the benefits here from the standpoint of, this addresses many of the things that have been confusing for lots of different people. And so it provides a clear designation of who's responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep, knowledge of which organizations are using the fields, the dates and the times that the fields are being used so that they can potentially be open or utilized by others. And when, helping the public know when they can use these fields and when they're reserved or not reserved, provides a revenue stream that can be identified and dedicated to the field maintenance and improvements. It allows for an increased use by organizations within the city limits, so that they're not having to leave the city limits to be able to utilize the facilities. And again, allows for that casual pickup game user, and just a better all knowledge of the use and what it takes to maintain these facilities. And we hope too that it reduces the burden off of FLA to manage the field rentals and the maintenance, and allows them more time to focus on the programming. And, you know, they have made a significant investment to the children of our community. And we hope that by shifting this, it allows them more time to be able to spend with the children in our community, and potentially reimagine what they would do if they've got some of this time and energy that they were having to invest here, they can put into investing in the children and the programs. So yeah, with that, I think we'll just touch on next steps and we'll open it up for questions. So, you know, if we decide to go this route, we would need to make a recommendation to the city council to adopt the fee structure. Once city council has the opportunity to discuss that, targeting their March 22nd meeting, we do have to make this public, so it would be posted by April 1st. And this again allows for the city council consideration and final adoption on April 12th. And then once that's approved and adopted, the FLA teams will be contacted and regarding the scheduling of the fields for the 2021 season. So hopefully, if we take action tonight and move it to council, we could potentially be wrapped up by April 12th. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here and open it up to the commission. Questions, comments?
Commissioner Steenblock.
Yes.
I think I've held my breath longer during this presentation than I have in my entire life, but I hope the answer is yes. I hope this comes a lot of information to us, what, an hour almost of reading and trying to keep up. It leaves out a lot of the previous history, which of course we can't do. Please tell me that this was given as, not to us, but at least it was shared with FLA management before it came to us in this format, because I can't believe this format is conducive to a good communication with the partnership that we're saying we really truly want. So have we shared this with anybody in the FLA organization?
So the presentation that we gave you tonight has not been shared. It was just finished. The some of the fee structures and other information, we have been going back and forth to gather information and to get the details. And so
well, I apologize for, being kind of upset about this, because I don't know how many times we don't know, I didn't know, we didn't have, I didn't see. This is probably why FLA did such a good job all those years when nobody was really trying to micromanage them. They know how to schedule, they know how to plan, they know how to, there's a little blip in the screen there where there was a little problem. And again, my question, I'm not going to try to take up because I have a whole page of things that I'm going to listen in a minute. But in June, when there were some safety issues, did anyone sit down with the city and the FLA organization say, hey, what is this? Or did we jump on, there must be a problem, and hire a third party person to go out and assess the situation? And who was the third party? I also want to know that.
So yes, we did have meetings and sent emails and had face-to-face meetings regarding the issues. There were some concerns. We wanted to make sure that, as you've pointed out, there was one individual on the parks, on our commission at that time, that had some turf expertise, and we were concerned about relying on that one individual to be able to make some of those determinations. And so that's why the third party expert was hired to come in and do that. And yes, there were meetings with FLA to discuss those issues. That's where that original maintenance plan came from. It was FLA bringing back a copy of a maintenance plan as to what we were going to do. And that's where we ended up with the plan for 2018.
Well, I'll stop and I'll have more to add maybe later, but I'm anxious to hear what everybody else has to think of this.
Terry,
Yes.
so I guess I'm kind of thinking if we're voting on or supposed to vote on this tonight, that's a bit premature if we haven't
Wait.
talked to FLA yet.
If we haven't what?
If this whole thing hasn't been discussed with FLA, the rate sheet and stuff or fee schedule, we're premature in us as a commission voting on this.
Right.
And we don't have to. I was advised to bring it to the Parks Commission for this meeting tonight and then schedule a meeting with FLA. I did have one representative from FLA who is present tonight that did email some questions, and we've been trying to, on short notice, get a time set up to answer some questions, and agreed to just join the meeting tonight. So we have Melissa from the pitch.
I mean, again, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And I think it's a bit cavalier to think that we're going to go out and tell them how this is going to be without their input into this fee schedule that they haven't seen yet.
And if the commission is not ready to take action tonight, that's fine. That's part of the discussion tonight.
Yep.
The timeline provided is if the commission, I think the last slide said, if the commission made a recommendation or approval to council, if that happened tonight, there is an opportunity to discuss at the city council meeting on Monday, March 22nd. So, if that's part of the discussion tonight, that's commission discussion.
I'd have to echo kind of Tim's comments, just in the sense of it may be premature to vote on this. I think Jamie, Terry, you guys laid out everything that's happened, especially for those who weren't quite aware, very well. And I appreciate that. It is a lot of information, though, that even as I've been somewhat involved throughout the process here, that I would like some more time to take into consideration the presentation. So if I could also have asked that you provide a electronic copy of that to us, that'd be great.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. It'd be nice to kind of go through that. It was a great presentation, but it's nice to have that hard copy in front of us.
We agree it was a lot of work, but that's why I wish it would have been shared, whether it was just done or, shared just to give me a little bit time to at least look at part of it. And it was all done the timeline by one side of the situation. And you'd like to see if there's any blips in the screen there that maybe somebody has an idea different than that. So I just, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm happy
You
to
have a
send out the
handout.
presentation. Happy if there's time to digest. There's a lot of information, and part of the model, and not just for Fenway Fields, but for the golf course and our senior center with this management model. We went through it last year with the golf course, trying to understand operations of actual rounds of golf, and we learned a lot from that. Of the actual reported in 2017 were much different than what we were collecting in 2020. So it was just that information gathering. It is a lot of information. So that has taken a lot of time, and literally weekend and even just through, today, getting additional pieces of that information to our goal, setting out to find a happy medium with the city and FLA at a fee structure that would work well for both groups in 2020. We started these conversations, looking back to the timeline, originally the city, when we changed to the management or the maintenance contract, instead of FLA paying that, we proposed, the flat rate, with a justification that instead of paying the contractor directly, you'd pay the city, and that was not a mutually agreed upon decision. So from there, we went to the $2,000 a week. We've talked about an hourly rate and haven't found a number that works there. And we've, I think FLA suggested $10 per person, but really from a, revenue standpoint, that's about $14,000 for the city. And also $10 per player. Is that regardless of recreation? Is that for T-ball players? Is that for, traveling teams? So there's some, equity, conversation of what's that fee there. So we've been working through this, and I think, a season permit would allow the opportunity for them to continue to schedule and use the fields as they've been doing so at a similar cost that they've been in the past. So that's where we've been. I understand it's a lot of information. I wish we could have had all of this done a month ago, but we've been collecting data for a few weeks now, so.
So John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, my name's John Herrick. I can turn my video on too, but my name's John Herrick. I've been on the fast pitch board for the last 4 years. I've been the sports director for the last 2. And now I'm currently a member at large, but being a sports director, that puts me on the FLA board as well. I know there's some misconception there because, Al Hauge, who is the president of FLA, and Paul Kozak, who is on the FLA board, they represent FLA in these discussions. Fast Pitch is attending this meeting tonight just to see what's going on and gather the facts. So from the way I understand it here tonight is Al Hauge and Paul were never notified or given an email link to this Zoom meeting. The only reason Paul's on here tonight is because I shared that link with him. So they weren't notified of this meeting tonight.
They knew that there was the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission meeting. I didn't send out Zoom links because no one submitted an open forum request, and everyone from FLA is welcome. So they, we're live streamed on YouTube, and our meetings are always the 3rd Tuesday of the month. So
yeah, but you sent us the link, that you didn't send them the link, I guess is my point on that.
I only sent the link to Melissa because she had requested to attend. So that was my point of communication.
Jamie, just an aside, when I was asked about anybody coming from it, I honestly didn't know. So if I didn't know that they were allowed to come without being invited, how in the world would they know? So again, it goes back to that communication that is so important. And I just appreciate him mentioning that some were, in and some were out. We have to stop that. We have to make sure everybody's on the same page.
I just have to say that during the Fenway advisory meeting, we did say that our goal was to bring it to this meeting. And we talked about the date and the time of that meeting with the Fenway advisory attendees so that they would know when that meeting was.
But did you invite them then at that time?
Yes.
You told them we'd like to have you come on and be part of it?
Yes. And Tim is shaking his head. Yes. I don't know if Tim, you want to say something, but you're on mute, Tim. Tim, you're on mute.
Hold on.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, we did talk about the fact that we're going to try to get this on the meeting tonight. These meetings are regularly scheduled public meetings. I know it's a little different than when we were in person in the council chambers, but these meetings are always public and anyone's welcome.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, the agendas are posted. There's an open forum section that does allow for public comment. There's a link on the agenda to email for public comment, and we're live streaming on YouTube that is available for the public. It is a different situation being Zoom, but it is public notice 3 days prior. So
I guess my point was, we're kind of in a contract situation. We're dealing with them. So it's outside of it's open to all the public. Never mind.
Is there any other commission comments, or if it's, if not, we can have a motion to entertain a motion if there's any other comments, questions, any other information that you might need as it relates to the proposal of the season permit. Are there any other questions or comments?
Betty, I see your hand up.
I guess I just would like to understand how FLA is feeling about this. Is it a win-win? Are we talking about a win-win here? Is it just some concern over change? And I see, yeah.
I've received some feedback. I wish I had feedback from all the teams. I've been trying to gather information. But I think, a season permit, there's a lot of benefits to that, given what we've already explored. I don't think FLA was in favor of a hourly fee, and I don't think they were in favor of just a contracted amount from FLA. So we kind of ruled those out. The $10 per player did come up, and that was something we did consider in this next round of analysis and understanding. But I think we have the number of registrants, but there's a variety of teams and different there's recreation play, there's traveling teams. So there's a lot of, differences there. So they were not in favor, we didn't settle on an hourly fee. They recommended $10 per person. And the permit fee, I think, is advantageous to both groups because it's, they can schedule the fields like they were in the past. And especially with rainouts, and even if there's, hopefully we don't have COVID, hopefully COVID's going away, but if there's COVID quarantines or any COVID related cancellations needed, they can simply just reschedule for another date that's open. So it's pretty simple. We're not necessarily having to track every single hour that is recorded. So from a city perspective, to try to find a model, there's only so many different ways you can, as we looked at, come up with a fee structure. And we've definitely worked with FLA. We've had joint workshops. We've had the Fenway Advisory Committee meetings. And those conversations all, we're going well of let's consider this amount or let's try this instead. So we're working on trying to get to that happy medium. And I think a season permit is a good benefit to FLA teams because they can continue to schedule and use fields essentially the same. It just would all, everything has to be on the schedule that is a unified schedule so we can know when games are happening or practices and try to maximize utilization outside of that.
Jamie, to make me comfortable with this, I would have to know that the discussions that you've had have reached a mutual understanding and agreement. Seems without that, we're not going to have a very good outcome for this proposal. So I'd like to hear that they're in line with what's being proposed, or if not, what their objections are and how do we resolve those.
So Doug, can I clarify one thing when you talk about an agreement? Are you looking for an agreement on the concept of a per player versus the permit, or are you looking for an agreement on the dollar amount? What are you looking at?
Well, I think that if the permit is the way we would like to go, I'd like to hear that it's also the way FLA would like to go. That's an accommodation or an agreement that the two can settle on, that is something that is workable with them as well as with us. To have the discussions with them and then we go off and create what we think is the best. I don't know. I'd like to hear what the reaction that FLA has to this.
I'd like to hear that as well, Doug.
Tim, do you want to talk about the Fenway meeting? And I mean, the proposal for the permit fee was one that was brought forward as part of that meeting. Do you recall that? Or
I do. I can't recall their exact feeling on that. I know they had preferred the per person fee, but I believe they were open to a season fee. But I think I still, to echo Doug, would like to, get some feedback from them as well on kind of come to an agreement on what that cost is. Remembering that at least in my opinion, we shouldn't be looking for FLA to cover the overall cost. It's like you guys did mention during the presentation, that's not necessarily what we're looking at to cover cost all the time with these fields. It's a community service to have these fields. And really, at the end of the day, we want to look out for the kids.
One comment that I have is that Fenway is a city-owned park, and we want to also make sure that other kids that are not in those sports that want to come out and do something, that it's available to them also. So I mean, we have to look at it on two sides, but I mean, with the parks, lakes, and trails, that is one of our parks.
I agree with that, Jason, but you know, it is one that Flaw has a considerable piece of the pie in, so to speak, with how much they've given to those fields over the years. So I don't want to.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that also, Tim.
Melissa,
Well, and I think too, Jason, that, you know, one of the things that, you know, you have a nice field out there, you have a lot of activity on that field. And what you don't need is, you know, some kid going out there with his bicycle on a rainy day, you know, turning donuts. And,
No,
you
we don't
know,
want that.
like I see up at Belts Park on a pretty frequent basis. So I think that, you know, Fenway, you just have to handle a little differently.
A lot different.
I want to make sure, I know that we're not in open forum, but I want to make sure, I'm just making the disclaimer that I know we need to table this. And what we'll do is we'll table it and we'll get you guys a copy of the proposed fee structure to the committee here, and we'll get it to Flaw as well. But I also want to recognize that Melissa has had her hand up and hasn't, so I'm kind of breaking the rules, but I want to give her a minute.
Oh, I think is she.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to mention, I know in your fees you mentioned throughout that whole slide, I've been watching it. We're forgetting about the field prep fees for the games. And so that's another cost to our program as well. So that portion is not being talked about on this end of it as well. And that's going to be another progressive cost for us to have pay for those fees that have people coming in, prepping for each game that we have up at those fields. Also, what Tim said about kids going in and making donuts on the property. I mean, who's going to pay for the damage that's done out to those fields when we are allowing access to all the kids that are in the community there? We've got some buildings on that property as well that we've put money into, and a gator, and we haven't heard anything about how that's going to be divided as well. So I just have several issues that I want to make aware to everyone that haven't been touched on as well. And I would like some answers as to that as well moving forward.
Yeah, I think we can put those on the list. I know, I know we've discussed the property in the past, and we can pull that out and look at where that was at. And if we need to make changes to that, we can do that, and we can look at, absolutely. So if I'm hearing correctly, maybe a next step, again, we need to decide if we're going to do a special meeting or if we're going to follow our regular meeting schedule, because we're delaying, which I'm totally fine with. And again, we've been gathering information even up to this weekend. So I apologize that it's very late, but I will also say thank you to Jamie for gathering and trying to pull it together. So what we'll do is we'll table this, and we'll give you guys the proposed, and you tell me if this is not an accurate recap. We're going to table it. We're going to give the commission the proposed permit fee amount for each one of the teams. We're going to visit with Flaw and ask them how they feel about the permit fee. And I guess for clarification, do you want us to ask the individual teams, or do you want us to ask Flaw president on that piece, just for clarification? And then what else is it that you need?
I think that's a good start. I agree. There was a lot of work done on that. It was a very intensive job that you did. Nobody can say that it wasn't. Took a lot of time for you to gather that. But again, it was all gathered by one segment of the population on this subject. And I would like them to see that as well, so that if there's anything that can be corrected in order to have a good partnership, you want truth and transparency. So from my point, I wouldn't be able to even think about voting on it today. I would like it to see it tabled. I would like to see the whole presentation that we received tonight given to FLA. And then if it takes a special meeting to keep this on track, I'm for giving more time to it. But I want it to be like the Castlewood, that there's a lot of problems trying to do it from the top. And the time you start talking to people, look at how, I think we got a good arrangement for everybody. And that's what I'd like to see with this, that everybody can walk away going, you know what, we were all listened to, we weren't putting words in anybody's mouth, and we're going to continue to do the great job without any of the help up until how many years ago to take care of the kids in this city. And it's not a city park that people can just go up and play on. It's an athletic facility. And if we don't keep it as such, we're not going to have teams and tournaments that want to come in. So yeah, I agree with Jason that it's a city-owned park, but it's an athletic park. And I think it has to be treated quite differently.
Okay, so Karen, to summarize, you are looking for a copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
Correct.
You're looking for a copy of the proposed permit fee structure. And then we can provide it to FLA as well, both of those items, and get feedback from them on both of those items and bring it back. Is that a
That would be
recap?
that's how I would feel. I don't know
Okay.
the rest, but
All right,
Yep.
and Betty, I see your hand up.
Thanks. I just want to, I guess, get my baseline correct. So our big question here is, or I should back up. So some time ago, the city has decided that the hands-off approach for the things that we own has not been, we'd like to move that in-house so that at least we have, so as we did with the golf course, had issues and then we had no data, you know, as we have with the senior center. So a new model was agreed to. Is that correct? And that's not what our question is here. Our question is, how do we move forward with the athletic fields? Is that true, or are we still back to answering the original question?
I think you're correct. That we
Okay.
it is a facilities model change with our golf course, our
Yeah.
senior center. We're currently bringing that under the city as well, and the facilities for athletic.
Okay.
So it's, that was communicated and understood that we're going that direction, end of 2020. So where we're at now has been working through collecting some data that we were to understand a fair and equitable fee that works for flawed teams and organization and for the city. And so we're really trying to figure out that fee structure. And, the recommendation with the season permit, again, we've taken into the consideration the conversations with FLA. We've been involved in that process. And, I think that this amount due from FLA teams, I know, Melissa, I'd love to have a little more information on your field prep costs so we can continue to factor that in even more accurately. But part of the recommendation was to reduce your costs to the city. So you do have some budget for that field prep, but there just are some unknowns of what that field prep cost really is at Fenway Fields per sport or whatnot. So happy to have additional conversations. And I did want to say, I apologize for any confusion on our meeting. We've communicated our timeline of March 16th as our next regular meeting. So I thought that was out there and available. All our meetings are streamed live. I typically don't send out meeting links to individual parties unless they're requested to be in attendance for the agenda. So I apologize for that if there's any confusion. Moving forward, I'll make sure you communicate that a little bit better if you want to attend the meeting in our format. So.
Are we interested in any timelines? Because again, our goal here is to set a fee structure so that the fields can be used. So are we interested in any timelines for? So if we get to the point where I'm trying to play this out in my mind, right? So let's say that we end up with another Fenway advisory meeting because we share the fee structure and one side feels one way and the other side feels the other way. So then we have another Fenway meeting to try to figure that out. I don't even know how to say it. What are we interested in as far as a timeline so that we can get this done, I guess,
Well, I was advised to meet with the Fenway, get in touch with FLA once we had this meeting, because this was set and scheduled. So hopefully this week was, to communicate with FLA. And I know the city council has their workshop next Monday, the 22nd. So if we can touch base with FLA in the next day or two, this still could go to discussion for city council if that's appropriate. So I think we could try to stick with that timeline. I think council may want to discuss this again or have a look at it before they're approving it in April.
So we're bringing it to council before we bring it back to this group? I thought that we just
This
talked
is a
about, so if the fees remain the same or they change, it has to come back to this group. So I guess our goal then would be to meet with Flaw this week as you had originally intended. And then we'll kind of play the rest by ear.
Well, Terry, couldn't you maybe, I don't know, if you can schedule like a special meeting like next Tuesday, the 23rd? That way it gives you a chance to meet with Fla this week. You can get some input from city council on Monday. And then by that time, by next Tuesday, the 23rd, you've heard from Fla, you've heard from the city council, and you come back to the Parks, Trails and Lakes, and then we can maybe talk and possibly vote on it then.
I think it just depends upon the feedback and if we have to
Right.
gather more or if we're at an
As far as
impasse.
the timeline that, maybe schedule a meeting for next Tuesday, the 23rd.
So the goal could potentially be to schedule it that day, depending upon the feedback or if we have to gather additional information or hold a separate additional Fenway
Correct.
meeting.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Probably no time for a joint meeting between the commission and FLA. I mean, we're all hearing each other on the same page. Either that or the advisory meeting. Is anyone open to go to that from the commission? Because I think I feel disconnect. And to me, and pardon me if it's a little late, but a joint commission meeting would have been maybe more favorable so we can get everyone on the same page. Is there time for that or not? Otherwise, I agree with
I think
Tim
we
that-
can make time for whatever's needed. I think that we can make time for that if we need to.
Jamie, just to clarify, Monday's meeting is not a workshop. We had workshop this week.
Right. It's a regular meeting.
Yeah, but we do have a discussion section of the agenda. So we could potentially, if there was any further council feedback that was needed, we could potentially add it to that section of the agenda.
Yeah, I apologize if I spoke wrong. I did have in our notes the regular meeting on Monday, the 22nd, as a discussion item, if needed from council.
All right, so to recap, we'll get some feedback this week from FLA on the dollar amounts. I think if we can also then get a better understanding of, I thought we knew the maintenance costs and including the raking and the chalking, and I thought that was already provided to us, but if we can get a breakdown then of the maintenance costs for each of the teams to better understand, I guess I didn't clearly understand that because I thought the fee structure we had was taking into account that maintenance during games. And so if we can get that breakdown to try to figure out what that is so that whatever fee we give is equitable. I think that's why we were originally looking at we weren't sure. So again, what I would be looking for there is just the maintenance costs of that. So what is it on game days? What does it cost for chalking and that slide that had the strikeouts? What would be left there? What does it cost for those things? That would be really helpful. So then we would have the actual cost to be able to look at, and then with the permit fee, the permit fee, I guess, maybe it would help too to have it all in one slide. What each team pays to FLA for the field rental, and then field rental for the team plus, not with maintenance, just the field rental plus the maintenance, and then what's included in that maintenance to make sure we understand that. Because I thought that I said that in my one slide, right? I thought we were reducing some of the maintenance burden on the team. So if we can get that would help clarify that for us. And then we'll just move it. We'll table this one and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Just need a
We've got it.
motion.
So I make a motion to table this until after you meet with FLA to get FLA's feedback on the permit fees and we get the additional information, and we'll regroup based on when we have that information and feedback.
I'll second.
Can I ask one question quick, please?
It's actually not an open forum, so we'll have Jamie touch base with you afterwards and get that information so we can table it and move on to the next agenda
Perfect.
item.
Can you put it in chat?
And we'll have Jamie collect that and we can incorporate that question. So,
We just need a vote.
so we had a motion and we had a second by Tim Miller. Do we roll call vote?
Chair Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer.
Aye.
All right.
All right, so next on the agenda is 5D, which is the Tree Trust Green Future Planting.
Let me just have a second here. All right, so Chair, members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, included in the agenda packet is a background staff memo that outlines a grant opportunity for tree plantings for city parks. And this was brought forward by our city engineer, and I worked with Dave Adams in Public Works to review this opportunity and provide a recommendation for an application to submit. So Tree Trust is an organization that works with municipalities to plant trees in the community. This program would plant 50 or more trees within any municipal park, public park, or recreation area. I kind of outlined some of the other details here, that they'll have volunteers, are trained in proper planting, and they'll come out to our site and plant this. So I included in here, we are interested in submitting an application and consulting with Dave Adams. 50 trees is a lot for one location, so we would like to move forward with an application for Castlewood Golf Course. And the reason being is that over the last couple of years, we've lost about 45 trees, and some additional trees do have emerald ash borer. So it's a good opportunity that we can utilize this grant opportunity to replace those trees we've lost from storms or having to be taken down. So this here, the application questions provided just outlines what we will be submitting. It's just all of the details regarding Castlewood Golf Course and how this will be maintained and taken care of in the future. So with that, looking for approval of the grant application for Green Trees Future Program to be submitted by the City of Forest Lake for spring 2021.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Betty and a second by Karen. Do we have any discussion?
The golf course manager is going to be involved in the placement of the trees.
Yes, city staff can consult with them with their maintenance staff on placement of trees.
Have we considered cutting down all the trees because they can interfere with my game?
That could be
And
considered.
filling in the water holes.
Okay.
My husband would concur, Doug.
Plant all 50 trees along the perimeter. That'll be our new fence line.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion besides Doug's golf game? So we have a motion, a second, and no further discussion. Do you want a roll call vote?
Yes, Chair Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead,
Aye.
and Commissioner Guyer.
Aye.
All right, so then next on the agenda, we have Timber Ridge Parkland dedication recommendation.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, also included in your packet this evening is a recommendation from our zoning administrator, Donovan Hart, regarding phase 2 of the Timber Ridge apartments. Let me just pull this up here. So this is on Everton Avenue, and it's 106 units, and there is Sean Silvera Park is nearby And so the staff recommendation for this development in Forest Lake is to accept a cash payment of $265,000 to meet the project's Parkland dedication requirement. So with that, we are seeking approval of the staff recommendation by Donovan Hart to accept the cash payment for this development.
I'll make a motion to accept cash payment for the development.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Jason, a second by Doug. Do we have any discussion?
Jamie, just a quick question. So
Sure.
is that amount that meets with the minimum with the requirement we have for those developments?
Correct. That would be
2,500.
So there's-
2,500 per unit.
Yep. Okay. So there's over what, 100 units or whatever?
Yeah, 106.
106.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Only my comment would be that it's in line with what we had agreed on a year or two ago to take cash.
Yep.
All right, so we had a motion, we had a second, no further discussion. Do we want a roll call?
Chair Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramseth,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead,
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
All right, so next on the agenda is 5F, which is the YMC Park Play Days 2021 partnership.
Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, for the 2021 YMCA Park Days partnership with the YMCA. Little background, the city has continued to support this program every year, and we've typically provided a $2,000 contribution. This program is run by the YMCA over the summer. There's 2 different sessions for youth ages 4 to 12, where they do a variety of activities, crafts, games, and it runs Mondays through Thursdays from 9 in the morning till noon. And so last year, even during the global pandemic, the YMCA was able to safely offer Belts Park Play Days here in Forest Lake. And it was a really great opportunity for kids to get together. So this summer, the YMCA would like to continue collaborating with the city. Obviously, they went through some challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic and closures. So they are seeking or interested to see if the city would be able to contribute $2,500 this year. They are also considering a modest increase to the cost of participation for 2021. So with that, I know last year it was discussed and in favor, and I know Commissioner Ramseth, obviously had made a comment that even, additional support would be something to consider. So with that, it's the recommendation to approve $2,500 of the Parks Programs budget to support the Park Play Days at Belts Park this summer with the partnership of YMCA.
So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this item?
Well, I think it's a good idea it will introduce more people to Bell's Park as well. So maybe it won't be just during their summer play days, that they'll utilize the park on other occasions as well. So getting them familiar with it is a good idea.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, do you want to take a roll call vote, Jamie?
Chair Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Aye.
Commissioner Moorhead,
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer,
Aye.
You forgot me.
Commissioner Ramseth.
Aye.
Sorry, I knew it.
The best for last.
There you go. Thank you. I apologize.
All right, so the next on the agenda is 6A, which is the Snowmobile Club. And on this one, it's informational, no action required on the next two items.
All right, so Chair, members of the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission, tonight we have a guest speaker for these items. They're going to present to you. It's David Murphy and John Brudemus with the Forest Lake Snowmobile Association. And they want to share a presentation, which I'll bring up in just a minute here, really to re-engage with the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission regarding a snowmobile friendly community. This is an initiative that would really be in partnership with some other economic development conversations in the community, the downtown group. But there's an important role for the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission in being a snowmobile friendly community. So they want to re-engage this conversation with you and see what that role might look like from a Parks, Trails and Lakes perspective regarding access points and safely traveling throughout the community. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over here in just a minute and welcome David and John, and I will share my screen here for the presentation. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay. Does everyone see this presentation?
Mhm.
Okay, so John or David, whenever you're ready, I'll kind of navigate through this as you run the presentation.
Hello, Jamie. This is John Brudemus, and I'm the president of the Forest Lake Snowmobile Club. And, as you know, we want to talk about snowmobile friendly community, but I wanted to just give you a little information about our club, just a little history. I'll be quick, and just to give you an idea of our club. First of all, we started in 1966, so we've been around for over 50 years. We actually have some of our members are still those members that first started the club. So it's been a great club for all of us. And we, as you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and our motto is that we're a club that rides. But we have a passion for that, but we also have a passion for volunteering. And so we do volunteering for safety reasons. We do some donating for the Veterans Ride that happens every year. And just to give you an idea of some of the safety things that we do, for individuals born after 12/31/1976, they need to have a snowmobile safety certificate. So in the past and in the future, we hold classes to train the young people in snowmobiling. And just recently, this last year, we did a lot of maintenance and trail maintenance and signage in our trails in Forest Lake and throughout Washington County. And under the direction of the Washington County Star Trail, we put stop signs along with some other organizations at every road crossing. There was a discussion with law enforcement saying, especially on the Hardwood Creek Trail, that cyclists don't have to stop, they yield, but snowmobiles need to stop. So we did that this past fall and put stop signs and stop aheads and cautions where needed, so to make it safer and obviously a more enjoyable experience for our fellow snowmobilers, especially in the city of Forest Lake. And by the way, go ahead.
Do you see my screen, David?
Yes, we can see the agenda.
Yes, I just want to let you know, let me know when you're ready to transition.
Okay, we will. Thank you. Right. I just have a couple more comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to David, and then we can start with the PowerPoint slides. I just wanted to give, I was going to say that our safety record in Washington County has been one of the best in the state. And our safety experience here in Minnesota is really better than any of the other surrounding states that we have around us. Just to give you my own experience, just lately, we've had kind of a hit and miss for snow, which seems to happen more often than not these days. But after, we got our snow around Christmas time, and then in January and February, we had decent snow and cold enough to keep the snow on the trails. And then after that bad cold snap we had, my wife and I went out several times on the trails in Forest Lake. And it's just, and we did it when the weather was nice, but it was just so enjoyable to see people out, families and kids. It really is becoming a family sport, snowmobiling. We hopped onto the lake, and of course, that's like a city on its own, where ice fishing, and you can see families out there, and you see these kids just playing in the snow. It just kind of warms my heart. So, and again, we want to highlight Forest Lake. I already see Forest Lake as a very friendly place to go snowmobiling, and so we want to work with you. And we're kind of the boots on the ground. So when things need to be done, like signage and trail maintenance, our club is part of that. I was going to say man force, but anyway, workforce, I guess. So anyway, and our goal is to really educate. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about our club. If they do, I'd take them now, or I'll pass it on to David.
Is there any kind of signs or anything that we can help you guys with? Any different signage or anything throughout Forest Lake?
Well, right offhand, I don't think so. We're, and David will get into this, but we're also part of the Washington County Star Trail Association. And so that organization receives money from the DNR. And so they handle our signage. And then the Hardwood Creek Trail is also a state trail. So there's other organizations that have helped in that event also. So, but I appreciate the offer, and if we need something, we'd be more than happy to ask for it, and vice versa. If you need something, we're more than happy to help you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, David.
Well, thank you. Thanks, John. My name is David Murphy. I am a Forest Lake Snowmobile Club member for about, I want to say about a dozen years. As a local resident of Forest Lake, I've raised my children there, and they're now in college. And I just can't tell you how wonderful it has been to be a part of the Forest Lake community. I am also a region director for the Minnesota United Snowmobile Association, which consists of 9 geographical regions across the state of Minnesota. MinUSA is really a coalition, organizing body that brings together over 200 private clubs across the state of Minnesota, which, by the way, are all volunteer clubs. And Forest Lake is a member of Forest Lake Snowmobile Club is a member of the Region 6 area in Minnesota, which comprises of Ymca, Washington, Ramsey, and Dakota counties, maintaining approximately 543 miles of groomed trails. This slide was put together a few years ago, so I think that has probably grown since then in terms of miles. You can go to the next slide if you could, please. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the snowmobile clubs in this area, their organizations, and how the trail systems are maintained. The Forest Lake Snowmobile Club, as John has mentioned, is a club that serves Forest Lake and the surrounding communities. I know the Forest Lake Clubs have got members from Minneapolis to parts of Wisconsin, North Branch. It covers a wide range of membership. The North Branch area also has a club called the North Branch Snowdrifters. There's another club in Rush City called the Rush City Snowbugs. There's another one which is a really good club that does a lot of grooming. It's a Wild River Snowmobile Club. And I believe Hugo now has a club called, you help me out, John?
Night Riders, the
Hugo Night Riders. Okay. So these are all volunteer organizations. There's a couple trail associations that help maintain and trails in the area. In the next slide, when we get to that, we'll kind of go over the miles, but there's an organization called the Rice Creek Trail Association that serves Ham Lake, parts of Forest Lake, parts of Circle Pine, Lino Lakes, Centerville, Hugo, and Scandia. And then in partnership with trails that link up to Rice Creek, there's a Washington County Star Trail Association that John has mentioned that consists of the Bayport Pathfinders. There's a 3M Club, there's a Cottage Grove Club, the Woodbury Club, and the Forest Lake Snowmobile Club. Again, the Hugo Club is part of that as well, and the Stillwater Snow Lords. So as you can see, there's several clubs, all volunteers that help with the trail maintenance, planning, et cetera, for the organization. So also part of this organization, as I mentioned before, is the Minnesota United Snowmobile Association. The Minnesota United Snowmobile Association is the organizing body that helps maintain and ensure that we get the funding to maintain the volunteer organizations. We go to the legislature for our legislative changes as required to make sure we get the appropriate funding and the safety regulations. I wanted to say something real quickly about MinUSA. Our funding dollars provided that are gained primarily come from registration, but there's also some other funding sources. Part of the budget for MinUSA has to go to the state of Minnesota for enforcement and parks and trails on the state level. So a big part of our budget goes to help maintain things at a state level. And at a national level, there's the American Council of Snowmobile Associations. And as we'll get to in a few minutes, you'll see there's a partnership between AXA and MinUSA to create a snowmobile friendly designation program. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So let's talk about some more about Forest Lake and what it really is. Forest Lake is a hub for snowmobiling in the state of Minnesota, believe it or not. The Forest Lake Hardwood Creek Trail is central to snowmobile trails, serving a major trail interchange and a network of trail that stretches as far north as Duluth and as far east as Siren, Wisconsin. On the Forest Lake area trails, and this was as of a few years ago, the Hardwood Creek Trail along Highway 61 connects to 160 miles of groomed trails in Washington County alone. It connects to 540 miles of groomed trails in Ymca County, Washington, Ramsey, and Dakota counties. And again, as I mentioned previously, we have 2 trail associations that serves this area. And the Washington County Star Trail has one, I think, a relatively new groomer, and the Rice Creek Trail Association has 2 groomers. In the lower right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a picture of the groomer tractor. And behind that groomer tractor that you don't see is the actual groomer itself that they pulled. A drag, thank you, John, to maintain the trails and make sure they're smooth and safe for the riders. Next slide, please. So here's an example of these are 2 map examples of the main corridor trails around the Forest Lake area. And on the left side, you'll see Forest Lake at about 12 o'clock there. And going south, you'll see the trail network. Anything in yellow is the trail networks going. You can see it goes way down to Little Canada area. And on the right side, we'll see the trail network that goes north and north and somewhat east and west, going up to, past North Branch, et cetera, up into Chisago, Lindstrom, et cetera. And it's very easy to go from Forest Lake into Wisconsin. It's very easy to go from Forest Lake all the way up to Duluth if one desires. In fact, there's been club members in our club that have gone to Duluth and in central part of Wisconsin on day rides. So this gives you an example of the network of trails that there are in their area. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the economic impact to snowmobiling in Minnesota. These statistics are old. I have attempted to get newer statistics. I'm still trying to get them, but these are what I have available through the Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association as of 2005. In many parts of the state, the trails are the backbone of winter tourism. With approximately 22,000, and now I believe it's up to 22,500 miles of maintained trails. And now it's up to close to 22,000 are maintained by volunteer organizations. And the state DNR has given the majority of what they had of straight trail back to the private clubs because we do a more efficient job and thorough job of maintaining the trail. About $14.5 million is appropriated annually from a dedicated snowmobile account for development, maintenance, and operation of the state snowmobile system. And of that money, the grant and aid trail budget of $8.4 million goes to local clubs to build and maintain 97% of the trails dedicated to the state. And again, here's about, now it's much higher than this. There's a dedicated amount that goes to DNR for enforcement of the state trails and management of the account. So a very conservative estimate, this is back in 2005, that about $200 million of tourism is generated annually by the state, and I'm sure it's much larger now. At the time, about 8,000 jobs and wages and salaries of $245 million and $525 million in gross state product. So looking at the gross receipt sales back in 2005, it's 1 billion. I'm sure it's much larger now.
And I just wanted to add, all of our clubs and organizations, we have trail maps that snowmobilers can use to navigate from one destination to the next. But just to give you an idea of here in Forest Lake, we have actually 7 businesses that support us and do advertising in our trail map. And I'll just read them off to you so you know. And so I'll start at the American Legion, EcoFun Motorsports, Holiday Gas, the Old Log Cabin, OSI Physical Therapy, Speedworks, which is a snowmobile performance company, and Vanelli's. And our club has been more involved and aggressive in bringing more local businesses to be part of our organization here. And so there'll be more each year, but we're very, as you would, I think you would agree, some of these or all of these are highly appreciated businesses in Forest Lake. So back to you, Dave.
Thanks, John. That's important that there's the impact statewide and also there's the impact locally. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk about a program called the Snowmobile Friendly Community. And how can, and it's a program, and I'll get to more detail in a minute here, but so the question is, how can Forest Lake Snowmobile Club become an alliance of the city of Forest Lake to, and you can click your mouse click there, make the city snowmobile friendly, leading to Forest Lake snowmobile tourism destination, which leads to more tourism dollars, and which also leads to more revenue for the city of Forest Lake. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And this is a little hard to read slide, but I want to preface this slide about talking about the snowmobile-friendly designation. The Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association, also called MinUSA, has been working with other states across the country in the development of a snowmobile-friendly community program that enhances snowmobile tourism and snowmobile opportunities, improves safety, and generates partnerships with our communities that are so essential to maintaining snowmobile trails. The program has become a national program supported by the American Council of Snowmobile Associations, also known as ASCA, and the Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association. Some of the benefits of getting this designation are several benefits to the community. So for example, new opportunities to market their status, which is called the Snowmobile Friendly Community status, on the national website and the Minnesota United Snowmobile Association's website and the local Stoneville Clubs website if we have one. This also enhances opportunities to tap into local Snowmobile Club and Minnesota United Snowmobilers Association's networks for snowmobile tourism marketing and community promotion. It brings heightened awareness to the snowmobilers that the community is a worthy snowmobiling destination that is accommodating to their needs, and more businesses and local tax revenues are generated within the community from increased snowmobile tourism and traffic. It brings a heightened awareness to the snowmobilers that the community is snowmobile friendly and has policies that make it safer snowmobiling destination. It also brings improved safety margins for snowmobilers and the community's motorists. It enhances winter recreation opportunities, as John has pointed out, for the community's residents and visitors. And last, it enhances the partnership with the community's local snowmobile clubs for emergency response efforts. So those are some of the benefits of a snowmobile-friendly community designation. On this slide here, this is really hard to read and I apologize. Some of the things that are on this that I'd like to call out are two of our neighboring communities have achieved this designation in the recent past. One is Ymca and the other is the city of Ramsey. What to note in this slide is that the city of Ymca, they have, there is now a parking lot for snowmobiles on the Rum River near downtown. And when there's snow, it's not uncommon to see 50 or 60 snowmobiles in the parking lot with people attending the local establishments. In Ramsey, they have provided safe routes through the community and to services and restaurants throughout the community. And they call this a trusted alliance between the city and the snowmobile organization. In addition to this, in return, MinUSA will help with the cities to promote their new status with their web listings and marketing materials. And then talking about signs, MinUSA and other organizations throughout the state usually offer up free signage, and part of this program will help ascertain the correct signage to help make Forest Lake become a snowmobile-friendly community. So with this, I would like to, just say on behalf of myself and John that we would like to build an alliance with Forest Lake to build a strategy to become a very friendly Forest Lake, a very friendly snowmobile-friendly community, and even go out as far as to say is to work with Forest Lake to build and achieve this designation of snowmobile-friendly community. Is there any questions? We certainly would like to entertain a motion to work forward in the future with Forest Lake to achieve that designation if it's possible. Anything you want to add, John?
That's good. Let's see if we have any questions.
So David, oh, sorry, I can't see. Is that you, Betty?
Yeah, sorry.
Nope.
So just off the top of your heads, what are the kind of things when you look around Forest Lake that you would think would make it a more snowmobile friendly community?
Well, to make it a more friendly community, there's several areas we have to work on in partnership with the community. So we'd have to, as John mentioned, we'd have to build a safety program, making sure that we have the appropriate safety program in place for our citizens. We have to work with the police and other law enforcement agencies, such as conservation officers, the sheriff and police, and making sure that we are in partnership with them to handle any enforcement issues. Also,
I wanted to piggyback on the enforcement issue. We do get calls from time to time if there's trespassing or something like that from law enforcement. And I like to say that, you know, we don't do enforcement, we do education. So we will go out and talk to the snowmobiler or the situation, the landowner, if there's a situation that needs to be addressed. And usually it's educating the snowmobiler and also the homeowner or landowner. So it's an important role that we play.
Thank you, John. So in addition to that, we need to form a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce in helping achieve the designation, work with city planning to hopefully provide safe access to and from the Hardwood Creek trails and other trails in the area, and and also work with our businesses to help try to get access to the restaurants, gas stations, and the trail system in the city. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
So David, I had a question similar to that. So if we were to look at, as you were talking, I kind of Googled a document, right? So the American Council of Snowmobile Associations, and it talks about this snowmobile friendly community. Is that a good guide for us to look at to figure out kind of?
Yes, it is. It is. I tried getting a more current version of it, but I only have one version. And I think it's a version you're looking at. The way it works is each year, the Minnesota United Snowboarders Association evaluates club progress to achieving that designation and works in conjunction with the clubs and the cities to achieve that designation. So I believe they receive submissions for the designation each year. And I think, I'm sorry, I can't share my desktop. If I could, I would. There's examples on that document of some signs that can be posted in the community. If you can find those, if you can share those, that would be great. But there are some nice signs that are posted in the communities. Just to give you some examples of other communities with the designation are Duluth, Ely, there you go. There's an example of the roadside sign, and then below it, there's a trailside sign. So other cities like Grand Rapids, Duluth, Ely, Ymca, Ramsey, and more cities across the state are achieving this status. And there's an old saying that us snowmobilers like to say, snowmobilers don't pack a lunch, we pack our wallets. So we do spend a lot of money. And I can tell you, I spent well over $10,000 on a new sled this year. So they're not, new ones aren't cheap. So when we go, we do bring a lot of tourism dollars to the areas that we visit.
Karen, did you have something?
Yeah, Kathy and I are both on an initiative right now where everyone belongs. And I can see this again as just another way of introducing our city as a very friendly, belonging to all types of entertainment. And I'm just wondering tonight, are we looking for action or just our blessing or get more information? What are we? I think it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, Karen, I think we want to partner with the city of Forest Lake to make the local club, give more visibility to our local club and make our local club more part of the community. But also I'd be, as a MinUSA director, I'd be more than happy to partner to build an alliance with Forest Lake to actually achieve that designation. So I'd entertain I'd love to hear a motion that we work, that the MinUSA and Forest Lake Club work with the city of Forest Lake to look towards that designation, which would require more workshops, more action in the future. And the lovely thing about this designation, it requires a 6-figure budget of 000.00. I hope that makes and we actually provide signage and other things like that to the community. So there's little to no expense associated to each city that has a designation.
And we would walk with you through this every step of the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Does it make sense to do a little research between now and the April meeting and just kind of figure out where we think, because this actually would have opportunities for potentially many different committees that are happening right now, like the Downtown Development Committee. I was thinking about them as well, and maybe having some conversations with Dan and others as it relates to the other committees and figure out how we coordinate it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I was thinking just maybe, looking at the commission, do we have a favorable thought on it? Not that we're going to implement it, but that we've heard from the gentleman. And I mean, from what I hear, it sounds good. That's all I would be, make no motion or anything like that, but that pass on my thoughts that it'd be great for Forest Lake.
Yeah, I agree, Karen. And I think that this is another good, feather in the cap of Forest Lake, another destination, so to speak, another group of people that we can attract to town. So no, I'm the presentation sounded really good. I'm real interested, and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, so maybe for tonight, because again, it's not an action item tonight, but I think that it sounds like there's support for the city being more engaged with this, and maybe we just, like I said, reach out to some of the other city staff with some of the initiatives they have going on, and then figure out where does this fall.
Well, wonderful, thank you.
Would that be okay?
Oh, that would make us very happy.
Yes.
And I can follow up with David and John and have those internal staff conversations, or with the chamber and the downtown committees, and come back to the April 20th meeting with maybe more of a formal recommendation with a motion to continue moving forward with working towards a snowmobile friendly community. I do think it aligns really well with what we've talked about as goals and visions: year-round recreational activities, and it's an improving access and accessibility. So I think it's a very welcoming piece to the community, and we can bring that to formalize a motion at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. I learned a lot
And
tonight.
thank you.
No, thank you very much.
It's under 20 slides if we had time. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Okay, take care.
All right, so next we have 6B, which is community events for 2021.
So Chair and Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission members, the discussion for tonight on community events 2021, myself, along with a couple of commissioners in the events and programs group, have met to talk about the spring fling for 2021. So just going to give a brief update on that tonight. Second part of the discussion was going to be around community events for the summer in light of COVID-19. Obviously, since this was on the agenda and planned for, I think that discussion is going to shift a little bit given the new restrictions and lifting of restrictions, I should say, by the state of Minnesota. So I just want to twofold, just an update on the spring fling that we're planning, and I'll turn that over to commissioners I'll turn that over to Betty if you don't mind saying a few things on that. And then just a group consensus given the new guidelines at the state, restrictions being lifted coming April, that we are comfortable moving forward with Arts in the Park for the summer, and just some feedback so I can know how to move forward with that. So that is for discussion tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to commissioners.
Okay, so Commissioner Karen and Chair Terry and Jamie and I kind of met. So we're going to move forward with doing spring fling again on May 1st, trying to keep it consistent from year to year. So we're a goal is to keep things as close to the same timing so people get used to kind of what we're doing. And then we think we'll be able to do something actually even similar to the last time, where we can have as many stations as possible for kids and families. So if you weren't at the last one, we had like the petting zoo and we had outdoor games and we had craft tables. And so we'll be real careful to keep things a little distant. And then have just kind of grab and go snacks for kids. What else? I think those are the highlights, but Karen or Terry, anything? Yeah.
I think so, and that a group like the Rotary would maybe be able to send, or the Lions are contributing a large amount of money, but maybe the Rotary would send some volunteers and just to man the different stations. And Betty was going to look for another petting zoo because the one we had last year that was perfect was gone. I mean, they're not not able to get those anymore, but
I found a couple, so we'll have to look into them.
yeah, you have to bring your dog otherwise. I mean, it's,
yeah, well, there you go. See, thinking
Puppies.
outside the box.
Everybody loves puppies.
Yeah, not about, Northwoods.
Yeah, I think you did a good summary. I think, Saturday, May 1st, we have a rain date of Saturday, May 8th, from 10 to 1. And we're just trying to gather up any additional sponsors and partners and fine tune some of those details. But I think we all felt comfortable having the spring fling in May, even more so now with some of the changes from the COVID perspective. So thank you. And thanks to commissioners who've dedicated time to planning this so far, and that will continue to, and Commissioner Geyer for kind of leading the charge and keeping this one on track for May 1st. So with that, just then any comments or questions on summer events? I'm sure you're all aware, but restrictions are being lifted where we would be able to have outdoor events in the larger capacities. So just wanted to have the opportunity for the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission to discuss Arts in the Park for 2021. So just open to any comments or feedback for direction.
yay, that's my comment.
We'll be able to move it back to Lakeside.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Is that farmer's market too, or will that be separate?
That will go back to the park. It only moved just due to COVID restrictions and having the space we needed to safely run it in 2020.
Good.
So with that, just a quick, I was planning on having this more of a conversation with the restrictions we were working with up until recently. So that makes it a lot easier. I'll plan on presenting another update or at the April 20th meeting, whether it's regarding the number of vendors we've got solidified or where we're at in that process. So I'll be moving forward quickly on getting that lined up.
Good.
Any other questions on that one? All right, moving on to 7A, the Belts Park Master Plan.
All right, so Chair and Commissioners, just a quick update. I've been working with city staff, city engineer, our public works director, and city administrator on some of our 10-year financial planning and just park planning. I'll provide a more detailed timeline for this project at the April meeting, but it was decided that to finish some conversations this year with the St. Peter's Church and fine tune some of the details regarding the master plan for Belts Park so that we can make sure that it covers everything that we're looking for, kind of cross our T's and dot our I's, try to see if we can get some of that cost brought down. So we are going to continue to work through that for 2021 and apply for the Minnesota DNR grant March of 2022 and continue moving forward with that. So I'm working on outlining this timeline and our next steps, which I'll share with you in April, but just an update on that from a next steps kind of perspective. So, and thank you to Commissioner Ramseth. He's been working with me on navigating through this process, and I'll get him engaged again here soon to start looking at things a little closer. Any questions?
Any other commissions? Then we move on to number 8, which is commissioner updates.
Oh, can I back up for 1 second? I think I have our our communications and recreation coordinator, Jackie. She was going to provide a quick update. I'll have to change it to staff updates usually. Oh, and include her on there. So if Jackie, do you have any updates you want to share tonight?
Just a couple. I've been working in one of the preliminary stages of reopening plan for the senior center. And I do have a mock-up of the spring fling flyer done. That's a mouthful. And then I've been working on a community events calendar as well. And that's kind of the main things that I've been working on right now for parks.
That's good. Thank you.
Any questions for Jackie?
Question?
Karen, are you talking?
Yeah, I was muted for a minute, sorry. When we were discussing the spring fling, we also came up with maybe a part of the flyer would be a description of the parks. Betty was saying that people don't really know where our parks are yet. And when you're working with brochures or whatever you're going to be working with, that would be something that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely that would be included in the social media posts or website updates, things like that.
Okay.
Right now, the way the flyer is, there isn't room for it, but that can always be
Right.
changed.
Something separate.
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah. The last
something
year's one was
people
really
could take.
busy, so I'm trying to kind of tone down the busyness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to Commissioner Moorhead's point of, we do have some existing, and I can share with Jackie, I haven't yet, on what our park flyers are of where our park locations are. So we can look at, maybe modifying that or updating it as a separate handout. We can print several copies of and hand out there. So I'll make sure I connect with Jackie on the details of that, but just wanted to at least get that draft flyer going so we can release that first and then have that for the event date, the handout. So. All right, thanks, Jackie.
Maybe a spring fling takeaway is a scavenger hunt to the other parks that they can do on their own. All right. So then I think, did any commissioners have any updates?
I just have one, and Jamie, I don't know if you have the picture handy that you could just show I know we're not talking about the sculpture tonight, but you had said maybe I could mention it in the commissioner report. The beautification club that's kind of starting, well, not kind of, they've started putting the pots up around town, and they're trying to look at different ways to beautify the city and get more people interested. And Jean Hallberg came up with a large donation for a sculpture, and we worked with, yeah, there it is, a sculptor in White Bear. And it doesn't show it off there. It would have the colors of the downtown area, and it would have more fish, and they're on waves. The fish are on waves that would twirl around. It's very easy to put in and take out. And the location that we were looking at is the circle where the tree is. And because it would have to go when the tree is up, that's why the person who's making the sculpture has a way of putting it in and putting it out. But there's more discussion, as Jamie will say, with Dave. I know they've all heard about it, but I don't think they've made any decision. They kind of left it up to us to see if that location would work. And we were thinking when you come down Broadway, you would kind of notice that right off front, right in the beginning. And all the fish are fish that are actually in the lake. So there's a lot of positive things about it, and it's paid for by the Hallberg Foundation. They've already had a mock-up of it up at their art show. And now the Beautification Club has decided, before we lose the opportunity, they're going to actually purchase it and hope that we'll be friendly to that location, but otherwise they just don't want to lose it. And so, we're going to have it, put it somewhere if it doesn't go there. And if anyone has better ideas about a different park or whatever, but the group that's working with that believe that circle would be the best. So I just wanted you to see a picture.
How big is it, Karen? How tall is it?
I know very tall isn't going to be my answer. Is it at maybe 10 feet tall? And
okay. I just wanted to get some sense.
Yeah, she wanted to make it tall enough so that the vandalism, kids wouldn't be able to do too much to it. And because it's such an open area there, it would be awfully difficult for them also to do too much damage. But she's got things in place. She's amazing how she's put together the materials for it. And she's got all the permits that she needed and the insurance. And I don't know, she's just way ahead of everybody on the project. And it's all coming in under the amount that was designated.
Thank you.
So how does that, Question for you, Karen. How does that attach to the ground then?
Yeah, that's the unique thing, that there's a cement piece that goes inside, and then it's I'm so good at this description. It's held in there by bolts or something. I don't know, but the nice part about it is it was made by her to be easily taken out. So it isn't, storage would be a problem, but we now have quite a bit of storage, I think, in the city. So that might be something they have to think about, but I'd have to get a better idea, a description of that for you, Jason, but I know that came up, and it was a good job that she had put together.
And you said it worked fine with where the power is.
Right.
There, right?
Right. And it would be lit, and I don't know. The group just thought coming down Broadway and being the entrance to the park there, that it would be a unique thing. But they also have to come up with a rule about different art and sculptures in the park, because you just can't let anyone go out there and I've got a sculpture of this or that and the other thing and put it in. So the city council loved this one, but they also said they have to come up with some sort of a guideline, which is smart.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we have our next meeting April 20th, so if it is, in the park location, once we fine tune some of those details and get some questions answered, then we can get this back on our April 20th agenda if needed.
That'd be great.
Yep, not a problem.
Anyone else have anything? Thank you again, Jamie, for all the hard work that you've been doing and the gathering. And I know it's been a lot of work, so thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you all for your time. And I think we're ready for.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor? Oh, I forgot the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everybody.
All right.